poor woman tried to pay for one slice of bread, the single dad CEO said, "Sit down, eat first." The late afternoon sun slanted across the quiet street, casting golden streaks through the windows of a small sandwich shop nestled in a sleepy neighborhood. The shop was modest, just a few wooden tables, the faint scent of fresh-baked bread in the air, and the low hum of a radio playing something old and soft. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of chilly wind and a slender young woman with blonde hair tied in a neat bun, her shoulders drawn tight against the November cold. She held the hand of a 5-year-old girl with bright eyes and rosy cheeks, bundled in a second-hand coat, wearing a pink dress that fluttered just below her knees. The girl looked up at her mother with quiet trust, though her small stomach had been growling since morning. Elara's eyes scanned the shop nervously. A few patrons looked up, then back to their meals. She guided her daughter, Mila, to the counter and stared at the chalkboard menu. "Hi," she said softly, barely above the hum of jazz music overhead. Could I just get one slice of bread, please?" The man behind the counter hesitated. "We don't sell slices, ma'am, just full sandwiches." Her fingers trembled as she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a few worn coins, some nickels, a quarter, a couple of pennies. She counted them out quietly. "I only have 87 cents, she said, cheeks flushed. "It's all I have today." Mila tugged at her sleeve, her eyes drawn to the tray of warm rolls behind the glass. Elara gave her a small smile and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Her own stomach was empty, but that wasn't new. She had grown used to the hollow feeling. The shopkeeper looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, I really am, but I can't sell a slice. It's just not how we—" "Sit down, eat first." The voice came from the corner of the shop, calm, steady, firm. Elara turned. A man sat alone at a table by the window with a half-eaten sandwich and a bowl of soup. His dark gray suit looked slightly rumpled, his tie loosened. His hair was tousled, as if he'd run his hand through it one too many times. His face was kind, with steady eyes, not flashy or loud but grounded, someone who carried quiet strength. "Please," he said again, more gently this time. "You and your daughter. Sit, eat." Elara hesitated. Her pride told her to decline. But then she looked down at Mila, who for the first time in days was smiling. A small, radiant smile that reached her eyes. Elara nodded. The man gestured toward his table. She guided Mila over, carefully settling her into the chair across from him. The shopkeeper, relieved, quickly brought a plate of warm bread, butter, and 2 bowls of soup. "Thank you," Elara whispered as she sat. Mila swung her legs in excitement. The man extended a hand. "Callum," he said. "Elara," she replied, her fingers still cold as she shook his hand. "And this is Mila?" he asked, looking at the little girl kindly. "Yes, she's 5. Mila grinned. "I like pink, and soup." Callum chuckled. "Excellent choices." Elara watched as Mila eagerly dipped her bread into the soup and took a huge bite, her eyes fluttering shut in bliss. A wave of emotion rose in Elara's chest, relief, gratitude, and something deeper. Her eyes welled, and she quickly turned her head, pretending to rub something from her cheek. Callum didn't speak. He simply returned to his sandwich as if this were all ordinary. But there was something in his gaze, gentle, observant, like he understood without needing to ask. Outside, the sun slipped beneath the horizon. Inside, at a table near the window, a stranger's simple gesture fed 2 empty stomachs and began to warm a heart that had almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Callum waved over the server quietly and asked for another bowl of hot soup and a sandwich, this time with extra cheese for Mila. The little girl had already finished half of her bowl, the warmth slowly returning color to her cheeks. Elara sat upright, her posture still hesitant, as if she were waiting for someone to tap her on the shoulder and tell her this moment wasn't meant for her. "Do you live nearby?" Callum asked gently, his voice low, almost conversational. Elara hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. "A few blocks down. We're staying at the Old Harbor Motel, just until I can find something more stable." He didn't interrupt or ask for more details, just nodded. The new bowl of soup arrived, steaming, with a soft roll on the side. Callum pushed it toward her. "You don't have to," she began. "I know," he replied. She gave him a small, grateful smile and picked up the spoon. "I lost my job 3 months ago," she said, almost in a whisper, as though saying it too loudly might make it more real. "I used to work as a quality tech at a food production facility, but the company downsized. Since then, I've applied everywhere I could: supermarkets, warehouses, office cleaning, but nothing yet. And rent at a real apartment." She trailed off. Callum's face didn't change, but his eyes held a quiet sympathy, steady and kind. He didn't flinch, didn't offer pity, just listened. Elara went on, her words slowly finding rhythm. "I sold most of what I had, jewelry my mom gave me, my old laptop, even Mila's toys, just to make it through the weeks. I didn't tell her why we had to move. I just told her we were going on a little adventure." At that, Mila looked up from her bowl. "I like adventures," she said cheerfully, completely unaware of the weight her mother carried. Then, in a gesture so pure it stopped the air between them, she tore a piece of bread from her roll and placed it carefully on her mother's plate. "For you, Mommy." Elara's lips trembled. "Thank you, sweetheart." Callum watched silently. Something in his chest tightened, not out of sadness, but in awe. There was something unbreakable about the quiet dignity Elara carried, even in hardship, and the generosity of a child with so little, offering her only piece of bread, touched him in a place he hadn't felt in years. Mila giggled when the melted cheese stretched from her sandwich to her chin. Callum offered her a napkin, smiling as she wiped her face clumsily. When the meal was nearly done, Elara glanced at the few remaining coins still in her coat pocket, the ones she had tried to use earlier. She pulled them out, pushed them gently across the table. I know it's not enough, but please, at least let me pay you back for the bread," she said softly. "I can't take more than I've already." Callum looked at the coins, then back at her. With one smooth motion, he pushed the coins back across the table and said with calm certainty, "I do not take money from people who know how to share, even if it's just a piece of bread." Elara blinked, her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. No one had said anything like that to her in so long, not without judgment, not without agenda. It wasn't just the food or the warmth of the soup, it was the respect in his voice. The quiet way he made her feel seen, not pitied. She nodded, unable to form words, and tucked the coins back into her pocket. Across from her, Mila was humming softly, swinging her feet, full and content. For the first time in many months, Elara felt something stir in her chest. Not hope exactly, but something close. Something that felt like being human again. The sky outside had already turned a smoky shade of blue as Callum stepped out of the sandwich shop. Elara and Mila had walked off in the other direction, their silhouettes fading into the quiet evening. He stood still for a moment, hands in his coat pockets, before pulling out his phone. He dialed a familiar number. Harper. His assistant's voice came through, crisp and efficient as always. "Yes, sir? There's someone I'd like you to look into discreetly. Her name is Elara, no last name yet. She has a daughter, Mila, about 5 years old. They're staying at the Old Harbor Motel. She mentioned working as a quality tech before being laid off. I need to know her full work history, certifications, anything relevant." A brief pause. Then Harper replied without a trace of surprise. "Understood. I'll start tonight." Callum hung up without another word. Back inside the shop, the server was clearing the table when Callum noticed something folded neatly by Elara's seat. A small, square handkerchief, white linen, slightly worn, but carefully stitched with delicate blue embroidery along the edge. The initials E, A were sewn into one corner. He picked it up gently, rubbing the fabric between his fingers. The stitches were fine and even. It was the kind of work someone did by hand, with time and patience, maybe late at night after putting a child to bed. He slipped the handkerchief into his coat pocket, then walked out into the wind. 3 days passed. Elara sat in the corner of the motel room, knees drawn up on the bed as Mila napped beside her. Her phone buzzed softly on the cracked nightstand. "Hello?" "Hi, is this Elara Anderson?" a woman asked pleasantly. "I'm calling from Eden Fields Organics. You submitted an application with us a few weeks ago?" Elara blinked, her heart suddenly thudding in her chest. Yes, I did." "Well, we would love to bring you in for an interview. We're currently filling a position in our quality assurance department, and your experience aligns well. Would you be available this Thursday morning?" Elara could barely process the words. She had applied to dozens of companies. Eden Fields was one of the first. She never heard back. She had assumed her application had gone straight to the recycle bin. "Yes," she said quickly, nearly breathless. "Yes, I can be there." "Wonderful. We'll email the details." As the call ended, Elara stared at the screen, her hands trembling. Mila stirred in her sleep and rolled closer to her, her tiny fingers brushing against her arm. Thursday came, gray and damp. Elara stood in front of the Eden Fields headquarters, dressed in her best, but still worn, gray slacks and a simple blouse that had faded slightly with time. She had washed and pressed it carefully the night before. Her shoes were scuffed but clean. She inhaled deeply before stepping into the lobby. The office was bright, filled with plants, light wood accents, and the faint scent of rosemary and mint. The receptionist greeted her kindly and handed her a visitor badge. The interview room was quiet, the panel of 3 managers welcoming but professional. They asked thoughtful questions about her past roles, her knowledge of food safety, her ability to handle inspection reports and audit checklists. Elara spoke clearly, honestly. She did not embellish. She did not hide her struggles. "I've worked under pressure," she said, "and I've learned how to stay focused even when things are uncertain." The interviewers exchanged impressed glances. She was not flashy, but she was precise, humble, and clearly capable. What Elara did not know was that her resume had landed on that table again because someone had quietly recommended her, someone whose opinion the company took very seriously. As she walked out of the building an hour later, the air smelled a little sweeter. She clutched her coat around her tightly, her heart lightened by a strange new feeling. Not certainty, but possibility. The offer letter came 2 days after the interview. Elara read it over and over again, making sure she was not imagining the words. Quality assurance technician, full-time, benefits included. Start date, Monday. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked over at Mila, who was coloring quietly at the small table in the motel room, wearing her favorite pink dress. "Mommy got the job," Elara whispered. Mila looked up, her face breaking into a wide grin. "Does that mean we can have cereal and milk again?" Elara laughed through her tears and pulled her daughter into a hug. "Yes, sweetheart, and maybe even strawberries too." Elara's first day at Eden Fields Organics felt like stepping into a new world. She was issued a crisp lab coat, a clipboard, and a proper name badge with her full name, Elara Anderson. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again. Not just a mother trying to survive, but a woman reclaiming her place in the world she had once dreamed of. Her role was clear: monitor cleanliness, test product samples, and ensure every step of production met the strict organic certification standards. It was meticulous work, but she was good at it. Her colleagues noticed her attention to detail and calm presence quickly. Within the first week, her supervisor, a warm but tough woman named Jeanette, remarked, "I don't know where you've been hiding, Elara, but I'm glad you're here." What made it even better, Mila was enrolled in the company's employee childcare program, a small on-site preschool designed to support working parents. Mila went each morning in her little pink backpack, excited to make new friends and eat snacks she did not have to share from a single granola bar. For the first time in a long time, Elara felt like they were building a life, not just getting through the day. What she did not know, what no one mentioned, was that the man who had helped her in the sandwich shop was the CEO of Eden Fields himself. Callum rarely visited the headquarters. He spent most of his time overseeing the supply chain operations, visiting farms, or working from his private office in a different district. His presence was respected but remote, like a quiet guardian watching from a distance. One Thursday afternoon, Elara agreed to cover an extra shift. A small delivery mix-up had caused delays on the production line, and Jeanette asked her to stay a little longer to supervise the final inspection. Mila, meanwhile, had been picked up from the preschool room by a temporary intern who had been assigned to wait with her near the employee entrance. But a miscommunication, just one forgotten handoff, left Mila momentarily alone when the intern was called inside for a question. When Callum arrived at the facility that day for a surprise walkthrough, he stepped out of his car and immediately spotted a small figure sitting by the main gate, clutching a pink backpack, her cheeks streaked with quiet tears. He walked slowly toward her, kneeling to her level. "Hey," he said softly, "are you okay?" The girl looked up. Recognition dawned in her eyes. "You're the sandwich man," she said with a sniffle. Callum smiled. "I am. And you're Mila, right?" She nodded. "I lost Mommy." He offered her a bottle of water and extended his arms. "Would it be all right if I carry you somewhere safe while we wait for her?" Mila didn't hesitate. She lifted her arms up, and Callum gently carried her inside, holding her like she was the most precious cargo in the world. In the security office, he sat with her, asking about her day, listening to her talk about her pink crayon and how she named it Princess Daisy. 10 minutes later, Elara came rushing down the hallway, her heart pounding, eyes wide with panic. The moment she saw Mila sitting calmly in Callum's lap, her knees nearly gave out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she wasn't with the staff, I thought." "It's okay," Callum said gently, standing and handing Mila over. "She's safe, and she's a very brave girl." Elara looked at him, stunned. You work here?" His smile was modest. "In a way." She held Mila tightly, overwhelmed by relief and a strange emotion she could not name, something between gratitude and the sudden awareness that this man had appeared in her life twice, both times when she needed someone the most. The days at Eden Fields grew longer as the holiday season approached, and with them came a quiet but noticeable shift in how Elara and Callum crossed paths. It began with brief exchanges during staff appreciation events, company lunches, harvest celebrations, small town hall meetings. Each time, Callum would greet her with the same calm warmth he had shown in the sandwich shop, always giving her the space to speak first, never making her feel small. At first, Elara thought he was just being kind the way he had always been, but then she started to notice the little things. A new set of coloring books and crayons appeared in Mila's cubby at preschool, wrapped simply in brown paper. Another day, there was a small cup of strawberry yogurt, Mila's favorite, left with her name written in careful handwriting. No sender, no notes. Elara asked the teachers, but no one had seen who left them. Mila, of course, had no doubts. "It's the sandwich man," she said confidently one evening as they walked home. "He likes us." Elara smiled but said nothing. She wanted to keep her feet on the ground. She had worked too hard to let herself float off into fantasy. Callum was the CEO. Kind, yes, but still her employer. And she was a woman with rent to pay, responsibilities to manage, a daughter to raise. She did not have the luxury of guessing at intentions. Still, she found herself looking forward to those company events, to the possibility of hearing his voice in the hallway, or seeing him pass by during morning rounds. Their conversations were never long, but they always lingered with her. He asked about Mila's favorite storybooks. She told him Mila loved fairy tales with brave girls and happy endings. A few days later, Mila brought home a book called The Princess and the Garden Fox, tucked into her preschool bag without explanation. Then came the evening that changed everything. They were home, finishing dinner, macaroni and cheese with steamed broccoli, and Mila was drawing on the back of a grocery receipt. She colored in wide, looping shapes with her new crayons, humming to herself. Suddenly, she looked up and said, "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Is the sandwich man Santa Claus?" Elara blinked. "What?" "Well," Mila continued seriously, "he brings surprises, and he knows what I like, and he always makes you smile when you see him." She paused, squinting at her drawing. "I think he's magic." Elara stared at her daughter, heart skipping. For a moment, she couldn't find words. Mila went back to coloring, perfectly content. Elara stood up and began clearing the plates, her hands moving on their own. But her mind was somewhere else entirely. She thought about Callum's quiet presence, the way he listened without rushing to fix, the way he looked at Mila, not with charity, but with genuine care, the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with respect. She thought about the way her heart beat faster when she heard his voice, the way her cheeks warmed when their eyes met across the room. And just like that, she realized something she had tried hard not to see. Her heart was stirring again, not out of desperation, not out of need, but because something real was quietly growing in the spaces between their shared silences. And that realization terrified her more than anything had in a very long time. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Elara's world tilted slightly, just enough to crack something open. She was walking through the hallway outside the employee break room, holding a stack of freshly printed quality reports, when she overheard two junior staff chatting near the vending machine. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried, casual and oblivious. "I heard it straight from Jeanette," one of them said. "She said Elara got the job because the CEO personally flagged her resume." "No way," the other replied. "He barely gets involved in hiring. She must have really made an impression." Elara stopped mid-step, her fingers tightened on the papers. She turned and walked away before they could see her. The rest of the day passed in a haze. She moved through her inspections on autopilot, nodding when spoken to, answering questions with half her mind elsewhere. That evening, she sat in their small kitchen, staring at the dinner she had cooked but couldn't bring herself to eat. So it had not been her qualifications. It had not been her hard-won experience, her careful interview answers, her persistence. It had been him, Callum. She felt a slow burn rise in her chest, not ungratefulness, never that, but something more tangled. A sharp ache of pride, of being helped without knowing, of believing she had climbed a rung on her own only to find someone had been holding the ladder the whole time. She looked at Mila, who was sitting on the floor nearby with a stuffed rabbit, completely unaware. That night, Elara barely slept. The next morning, she found herself standing outside Callum's private office. The receptionist gave her a curious look, but didn't stop her. She knocked once, then opened the door when she heard his voice. Callum looked up from behind his desk, surprised. "Elara?" She stepped in, closed the door behind her. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Was it you?" Her voice didn't tremble, but it was thin, tight. "Were you the one who got me this job?" Callum's expression didn't change. He set down his pen. "Yes." No hesitation. No explanation. Elara swallowed. "Why?" He stood, slowly, and walked to the window before turning back to face her. "When I was 10, he said, his voice even, "my mother and I were homeless for nearly a year. She had left an abusive relationship and worked 3 jobs trying to keep us afloat. Some nights, she would go without food so I could eat. She sewed clothes for other families late into the night. She was the strongest person I have ever known." He paused, his eyes steady. "One day, a stranger gave her a job without asking questions. That job changed our lives. It gave her the dignity she had lost, the ability to breathe again. I never forgot that. Elara felt her breath catch in her chest. I saw you and Mila in that shop, he continued. And I saw her, not the same, but similar. I could not look away. So I made sure your resume got where it needed to go. That was all. Elara stood still, her arms wrapped around herself like she needed to hold something in. I wanted to earn this, she said, almost in a whisper. I needed to believe I could stand on my own. Callum's voice softened. You did earn it. I just moved a piece of paper. You showed up. You convinced them. You do the work. Her lip trembled. I didn't want to feel like someone's project, she said. You are no one's project, Elara. Silence fell between them. And then, slowly, tears filled her eyes, not from anger, but from the overwhelming weight of being seen, truly seen, and still respected. She covered her mouth with one hand and began to cry, quiet, aching tears. Callum took a step forward, but didn't touch her. He just stood close, offering his presence the same way he had that day in the sandwich shop. And in that moment, Elara realized this man had never tried to rescue her. He had simply refused to let her be invisible. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when Mila sat at the tiny table in the corner of her preschool classroom, gripping a pink crayon in one hand and her stuffed rabbit in the other. The teacher, Miss Riley, knelt beside her as Mila leaned in close, whispering something shyly. "Can you help me write a letter?" she asked, eyes wide. "Of course, sweetheart. Who's it for?" Mila thought for a second, then smiled. "The sandwich man." Miss Riley smiled gently. "All right then, let's write it together." Mila dictated every word carefully, her voice soft but sure, while Miss Riley wrote it neatly on a piece of lined paper, then helped Mila draw a big heart at the bottom. That afternoon, when Elara came to pick her up, Miss Riley handed her a folded sheet of paper. "Mila wrote something today. I thought you might want to see it before she tries to mail it." As Mila skipped ahead down the hallway, Elara opened the letter. "Dear Sandwich Man, thank you for helping my mommy and me have yummy food. You make my mommy smile now. I wish you could be my daddy. Love, Mila." Elara stopped in her tracks. The hallway suddenly felt too quiet, too still. She folded the letter carefully, holding it to her chest for a moment. Her heart thudded in her ears, loud and confusing. That night, after Mila had fallen asleep curled up in her favorite pink blanket, Elara sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the note for a long time. The words weren't hers. They came from a child's heart, simple, honest, unfiltered, but somehow they echoed something inside her that she hadn't dared say aloud. The next morning she took the letter with her to work. She waited until mid-morning, when she knew Callum would be in his office. She knocked once and stepped inside without waiting for an answer. He looked up from his laptop, surprised but not unwelcoming. Elara didn't speak. She crossed the room, slowly, and placed the letter on the edge of his desk. Then she stepped back, clasping her hands in front of her, her face unreadable. Callum looked at her, then down at the page. He unfolded it carefully and read every word. His eyes softened. His expression shifted, quiet, touched, still. When he looked up, his voice was barely above a whisper. "If you'll let me, I would be honored to be that for her." Elara didn't cry this time, but she nodded. And something in the room, something old and cautious, finally let go. The seasons folded gently into one another, and with them came the steady rhythm of a new life. Callum, Elara, and Mila had grown into a family, not through grand declarations, but through the quiet repetition of ordinary moments that slowly stitched their lives together. They moved into a modest cottage on the edge of town, its backyard just big enough for a vegetable patch and a wooden swing Callum hung from an old oak tree. On weekends, the three of them worked side by side, Mila in her ever-present pink dress, Elara in gardening gloves, and Callum with his sleeves rolled up, smiling as dirt clung to his hands. Evenings became sacred. They cooked together, laughed, and always made time to eat at the same table. Life still had its challenges, but none of it felt heavy anymore, because none of it was faced alone. Elara blossomed. No longer the uncertain new hire, she had grown into a confident team leader, known for her focus and grace under pressure. Where there was once hesitation in her voice, there was now quiet assurance. She didn't question her place, she had earned it. Then came the 5th anniversary of Eden Fields. The warehouse was transformed into a warm, glowing space with string lights, harvest-themed centerpieces, and music playing under the hum of conversation. Employees from across the company gathered to celebrate. Near the end of the evening, the lights dimmed, and Callum stepped onto the stage. He wore a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. No tie, no flash, just calm, steady presence. "I want to tell you a story," he began. "It happened 5 years ago, before this building existed, before we had warehouses or trucks." The room fell still. "There was a woman," he said, "who came into a sandwich shop with her daughter. She asked for one slice of bread, just one. It was all she could afford." Elara's breath caught. "That day, I saw more courage and grace in that woman than I've seen in any boardroom. She didn't ask for pity, and when her little girl offered to share her bread, I realized I wasn't witnessing poverty. I was witnessing love, the kind that teaches, quietly and powerfully." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. He didn't name her. He didn't need to. As the spotlight drifted across the audience, it settled on Elara. She froze, eyes wide, face warm. And then, people around her began to rise, clapping not out of sympathy, but respect. Her team, colleagues, even managers stood, honoring not her struggle, but her strength. And then, from the front row, a small voice rose clearly above the applause. "Daddy." Mila, standing on her chair in her pink dress, waved both arms toward the stage, her smile stretching wide. Callum's eyes lit up as he smiled back. In that moment, everything else faded. It was just them again. Later that night, back at the cottage, they sat around the fire pit behind the house. The trees glowed gold, and the air was filled with the scent of smoke and cinnamon. They shared a loaf of freshly baked bread, still warm from Callum's Sunday routine, a quiet ritual that honored where their story began. Mila lay curled against Elara's side, nearly asleep, still holding a half-eaten crust in one hand. Callum reached across and gently tucked a strand of hair behind Elara's ear. She looked at him, eyes soft, and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." He took her hand in his. "I didn't just see you," he said. "I was waiting for you." The fire crackled beside them, stars blinked into the night sky, and in that small backyard, a mother, a daughter, and a man who once offered a meal sat quietly, sharing more than just food. A single slice of bread had started it all. Now, they had everything. Thank you for joining us on this heartwarming journey, a story sparked by one small act of kindness and transformed into something lasting. If it touched your heart or reminded you of the power of compassion, we invite you to stay connected. Hit that hype button and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more real-life tales that uplift and inspire. Your support helps us continue sharing the moments that move souls and light the way for others. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, even the smallest gesture can change someone's world.